Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your host, Brian Horning, here with my co-hosts, Randy Bryan and Reginald Andre. What's up, guys? How are we?
Hey,
good. How are you doing?
Wow. How do you survive your travels?
Yeah, it was good to see Randy in person, and now we're ready for quarter four.
I was in Florida too. It was beautiful when I was there. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, the weather was great.
Yeah,
it was not too hot in the day. It wasn't too humid. Last time I was in Miami, it was like 199% humidity, which I know is impossible. So, but anyway, this time the humidity wasn't too bad. Nice and cool at night. So anyway, it was nice.
We had a little fun on our landing. We had to pull back up at the last minute because they couldn't clear the runway in time. So that was interesting.
Oh,
when you're landing and then all of a sudden you're back up in takeoff mode.
There's one thing I'd be willing to bet money on. Your pilot's been wanting to do that since high school. Finally got to do it.
I said, when I walked off the plane, I said, "Good job up there." He was like, "Thanks."
Sure, it's super scary at the same time.
Well, I mean, we were close to the ground, and I was like, "We're going back up." I'm like, "This is odd." So glad to have you both here, though. For everyone listening, buckle up because this week we're talking about ransomware going off the rails here in 2025. This group called Qilin ransomware surged to the top of the charts, hammering critical sectors with hundreds of attacks just this year. I know several businesses have reached out to our company in the last month talking about this group, saying they got hit. And then we got this small New York city that decided to pay up after getting hit. Andre's going to fill us in on what's happening there. Randy's going to bring us one out of Australia where an ISP had its email system breached and customer accounts compromised. And we're going to talk about why that matters to you here. Three very different stories, but one clear theme. Ransomware and data breaches aren't slowing down. They're multiplying. So let's dive into it, guys. Give me 1 second while I share my screen here. Interesting. I wanted to cover this group because we got a call, last week from a company that was dealing with this ransomware group, and these guys seem to be kind of like taking the cake right now. With a lot of these other groups like Ransom Hub who have gone down, these groups, it's like a vacuum. These groups kind of fill in the vacuum and they don't go away. Like it's one of the things that we know here at this point, 15, 20 years into it, especially the last 10, these groups don't go away when the feds or, other law enforcement take these guys down. So Qilin ransomware in 2025 logged over 700 confirmed attacks this year alone, and the year's not over yet. These sectors that they hit include healthcare, manufacturing, local government, you name it, they're filling the vacuum left behind by Ransom Hub sudden shutdown. Now, Qilin runs a classic ransomware as a service model, which means they build and maintain malware, but let affiliates do the dirty work of breaking into your network. That's what's fueling the crazy growth is they don't have to really worry about getting in. They can just sell it to criminals who are already in there. This group of guys have become one of the most active threat groups worldwide, leveraging hybrid, both Linux and Windows payloads, so they can hit both on-prem and cloud systems. So they have like the Swiss Army knife of attacking different infrastructure. So no longer are Windows environments the sole target of this group when they have this Linux package as well. They're tailoring their attacks to very specific industries, which tells you they're not just spraying the internet and hoping anymore. They're targeting because they know the industries that typically pay. Because they deploy ransomware guys and they get into a negotiation, right? That's their outfit that has to worry about that. So they don't want to mess around with organizations and companies that they're going to struggle getting a payment from. So let's talk about it, guys. What are your thoughts on this group? What are you seeing in the article, or what do you know about this group in your own world?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was on the biggest target was manufacturing. We deal with a few manufacturer companies here, and we always hear like, "Hey, I just make bottles. I just do something here in this little factory. Why will hackers come after me?" But downtime for them can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and plus they have their own SLA, so to speak, that they have to provide to their clients. So these hackers they're killing it. I want to give that pun. They know that these manufacturers will be paying faster because they need to get back up. And another thing that I saw in the article that I also liked was that it was, the Cleveland court, for example, they didn't pay the ransom, but they spent $48,000 to recover. And Sonovus, they lost $44 million in costs after refusing to pay. So it's honorable when you hear CEOs and boards say, what, we're not going to pay, we're not going to let this continue. But then the tail end of it gets very expensive to now deal with this information. So it's important that you have the data, you have backups of the data. But as we can see, it still really doesn't matter. It's important to have that. But at the end of the day, if they're now going to threaten to leak it, that's something that you can't control. So most important thing is if you can prevent this before it happens, you are now just in a better situation.
Yes, and I think what really stands out about these guys for me with their ransomware as a service, one, that can go and have a farther reach than it would have if just they were doing it internally, but also they are really, really good at multiple platforms, multiple vulnerabilities, multiple this, multiple that. They're not just going after one particular thing. And I would say keep our eyes on this group for real for sure, because probably as they get more adept at using, bad AI or whatever you want to call it, we're going to see a lot of multiplication in their capabilities, because what they've gotten really good at is being able to get in there and work off many different things, many different vulnerabilities. And that's just going to explode as they implement AI in what they do.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, we talk about in our own businesses, right? The thought of knowing your customer, knowing your prospect, and knowing who you work well with. And that's something that this group has really defined, especially with their affiliates, in terms of like how they act, how they have the access to the organization, or what they're able to kind of do if they get in there, right? Can they do things like exploit VPN, exploit RDP, right? The group somebody already has access. They get in there and they look around and see like, how can we open things up, flip switches, and hit as many machines as we can as possible, right? That's what this group does when they get into these environments. They don't just like, hey, we got access to one machine, let's encrypt it, or we got access to 5 machines in a 200 machine environment, let's just encrypt the 5. No, they're working to figure out how can we get access to all 100. So you need to make sure that you have lockdowns on this kind of stuff, and you have somebody monitoring whether something that you might have turned off didn't get turned on, right? And that's a thing. That's what these groups love to do. They love to flip switches, exploit vulnerabilities, as Randy mentioned, but also live off the land, like the things that you have in your environment that they can just turn on and start using. And that could be IT tools that your IT team has in place to administer things, all the way down to just remote access tools that they downloaded off the internet for free. If you don't know that this stuff is happening on your systems and you don't have a way to detect it, you could find yourself a victim, a widespread victim pretty quickly. And the other thing that this group likes to do right away, we know of, is go after their backups. They look for your backups immediately. So you need to know if you have them, if they're immutable, meaning somewhere where they can't get to them and delete them or corrupt them in some way, and audit your backups, because we know these groups sit on these networks for 3-6 months. And if they're encrypting files one at a time over a 6-month period, that happens too, where they just encrypt the data over a long period of time, knowing that you're backing it up. And if they can encrypt 60% of your data before you realize it, and you've been backing it up for 3 months, well, you have 3 months of data that's, 60, 40, 30, 20% encrypted already. And you're going to pull that from your backups. You got to go back more than 3 months to do so. This is what these groups do, and this is what you have to be aware of. Make sure you're paying attention to your backups and make sure you're testing your recoveries. And I know a lot of companies don't do that because it's a lot of work, right, guys? I mean, how many companies do you come across that are actually testing their backups and making sure that they actually spin up and are as expected?
Yeah, I never ask my clients, do you have backups? I ask them, do you test your backups?
Right. And you have to, you're not just doing backups either. Like, you need to know exactly what you're backing up, and then you need to verify that exactly what you're backing up is actually getting backed up. Because I'm not a criminal, but if I was in there living off the land, I would just take all of these folders that are getting backed up and just change it to like a couple of random files. So, hey, I'm getting the backup report every night. The good guys are, but the backup, it's not been verified by anybody to make sure we're backing up what we originally intended to back up. That's like cybersecurity 101, identify, right? So anyway, that's my thought.
Cool. So, Andre, your story shows what happens when that kind of attack actually hits home. Tell us about what's going on in Gloversville, New York.
Yeah, so the city of Glover Hills, they just approved in their city council to pay $150,000 payment to criminals. So it's very, imagine someone breaks into your house, steals your house keys, and now you got to pay them $150,000 to get it back. That's essentially what happened. And unfortunately, this happened back in March, and now we're hearing about it here in October. And what we have is, similar, same story, different company or different city, where all of the city employees, payroll records, direct deposit information, account numbers of past and present employees. So basically, probably since this city has done some type of computerized system, all of this data is now in the hands of the bad guys. So originally, the demand was for $300,000. But the city council, negotiated, and they got it down to $150,000. So what's interesting also here is, again, this happened in March. Here we are in October. And just now they're saying, oh, and by the way, city employees, past and present, we'll go ahead and give you monitoring, credit monitoring for 1 year. Well, what about the last 7 months? And the reason they're saying that they did not tell the public or employees about this is because they were told by their legal not to say anything because they were still in the negotiation process. Now, I don't know how long it takes to negotiate. Does it really take 6-7 months to negotiate? But nevertheless, that's what they're saying, and they're sticking to that story. Another interesting thing that I'm kind of like reading between the lines is, did they have a backup? Now, I would imagine we would have heard more gripes from employees like, hey, this city can't work. So perhaps they're just paying the $150 to make sure that the bad guys, they give them a handshake to say, we promise we're not going to, release this data. But I don't know if they were really down for 6 months, because I think it would have made the news, that, certain different departments in the city couldn't work. But it seems like they've been just trying to keep this all a secret. And And now the fact that they now have to pay the 150, now they are telling the public what they want the public to know.
Yeah. Not all, I don't know. Not all lawyers are great lawyers, I guess, but maybe not all city lawyers are great lawyers. I'm not sure. But this screams red flag to me, Andre, because like you said, 7 months of negotiations. I'm reading their official press report or whatever that they put out on October 25th. And basically, it looks like around the middle of March, they started trying to contact the threat actor. And now we're talking about literally 7 months later, they make this public. Man, this is going to all come out in a court case, and we know it, because, and I'm not talking about like a criminal court case, but like a lawsuit of some sort, because it took so long for them to know. And how many people fell victim to this or that, breach or ransomware attack or whatever, because they didn't know that their city information had been leaked. So anyway, that's going to be a big deal probably.
And that's why I'm thinking they're probably using the word ransomware in that aspect, but maybe it was that their systems were still working. It's just that the bad guys said, hey, we have your data. How do you want to negotiate this type of thing? And notice they didn't talk about cyber insurance. A lot of times you'll hear like, like to make the issue sound a little better, it's not coming from the taxpayers. Insurance is going to pay for it. And of course, we know, although they paid $150,000 to the criminals, there's third-party, attorneys. There's obviously they bring in cybersecurity experts, a lot of auditing, forensic, and so forth like that. So although they approved $150,000, stay tuned for a few more council meetings to get the real bill.
Yeah, and I would just add a little asterisk or an aside. Cyber insurance would have been good if they had it. If they don't, it's not mentioned, so who knows? It'd be good if they have it. Cyber insurance in and of itself is a good exercise, though, for a business to get, just because they're going to require certain controls in place, and it may not even be what we would call full stack cybersecurity or whatever, but it's probably going to put them in a better place regardless. So it's a good exercise for a business that doesn't have any cybersecurity at all, to at least get cyber insurance and start looking at what it takes to be able to make, not just to make a claim, but to also get paid. And they're not going to pay if there's gross negligence. They're not going to pay if you didn't have MFA turned on, your 365 or whatever, So it is a good exercise. Would have been good for them to go through if they didn't.
Definitely look into it. But if you're not going to do those things that are required, then don't buy it, because you're wasting your money, because they won't pay. They won't pay out on the claim. Not, there's like people hopefully are starting to understand like the backups in this whole situation can play a big role in them not having to pay like that $150,000 that city paid. But when it comes to the data being copied and released, there's no guarantees there. So there's no refund policy with ransomware, and there's no guarantees that your data won't get released even if you pay, right? So the name of the game here is just don't get hacked, right? Do all the things and all the right things. As Randy mentioned, if you're going to want cyber insurance, a lot of those things are things that are going to deter hackers to move on elsewhere, right? I already mentioned in my segment where I said, like, this group only wants to work with certain companies that are breached. They don't want to work with everybody, right? So if they find out that somebody has a SOC and they have layers of security, that's going to be a no-go for Qilin Ransomware Group to an affiliate. They're going to be like, no, we don't want that. We want something where we know VPN's exploitable, or we can turn on RDP, or we can install remote access. They don't want to set off any tripwires or anything like that, right? So if you put these little things in place, these ransomware groups don't even want to deal with you, because there's other easier targets out there, and that won't change until people start doing the right thing. Like literally the group that called us last week, They definitely did hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue. We'll say that. And they used Avast for their antivirus, no SOC, and had no cyber insurance. So they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know Avast was still a thing, man.
So it is. So, the lesson for everybody here, governments, SMBs, is simple. Invest in resilience, not ransomware payments. Start looking at segmenting your networks, testing backups, incident response plans. These are all things that you need to have if you're going to have cyber insurance, right, Randy?
Yep.
So,
well, it depends on the insurance, but yes, those are the type of things. So 100.
Speaking of recovery and detection, Randy, your story shows how even big tech players can get caught flat-footed. So what's happening here with this Vocus ISP? Who are they? I've never heard of them. Fill me in on that, and we'll go.
Okay, so this is a telecom company in Australia, and I know we're very limited in our scope. We try to look at American breaches most of the time. Sometimes we do UK, Australia, New Zealand, others that matter around the world. And this one really struck out to me because being a telecom company, the breach wasn't that big. Okay, it was about 1,600 emails. But from those 1,600 emails, at least 34 of those emails that were breached were used in what's called a SIM jack, where a bad actor was able to get a hold of basically somebody's number by transferring the SIM. That's very easy these days. It's called an eSIM. Transferring the SIM or just transferring it to a new physical SIM. But 34, they were able to do that. The bad guys were able to do that 34 times. And the reason this is important is, we talk on the show. I think Brian probably says it the most. Don't use your phone number for your MFA. But the reality is, Brian, you literally say that. I can hear you every time I have to do it, talking in my ear. The reality is there are so many accounts out there it's literally the only way to do MFA for a lot of accounts. And so as a business owner,
you know what Brian does?
Makes a fake phone. I'm not sure.
I email those companies and tell them they need to up their security.
That's right. That's good. And that's really one of my recommendations today in an indirect way. But short story long, there are people that have their email account, which is their identity in a lot of cases, maybe with their work, maybe on personal accounts that are tied to their phone number. And we really need to make sure of a few things. We need to make sure that we're using those phone numbers as little as possible. Use an authenticator app, use a pass key, use your fingerprint with a pass key, whatever it is. Use something other than a phone number. In cases where you have to use a phone number and you just have to, like what Brian said, reach out to that vendor, maybe evaluate that vendor, maybe don't use that vendor at all. Or maybe it's like something like, some of us are members of like content groups where we're just getting content to learn from. Okay, that's not the end of the world. If they use a phone number there, if there's nothing like private or whatever. But I would also consider changing vendors in some cases that insisted on using just phone numbers for MFA, because that can be breached. And then finally, I would say, reach out to your phone company. Make sure that your SIM is locked to who you are. And so I know most of the major carriers offer something like that, but that would be another thing to think about. And what I think about is how much security, big security, is built on, my backup email address is my personal Gmail or my personal Yahoo. And my personal Yahoo is secured by a phone number. You got to think of all of these chains of basically control to make sure that you don't lose control of your accounts. So this is something to really keep our eye on. This is something to make sure that we're secure with our SIMs that they're locked down, and make sure that we're using phone numbers as little as possible.
Yeah, I know this is Australia, but these telecom companies have to do better, because you would think they would have a 24-hour hold period if you're going to do any type of SIM swap or go in person. So because, a lot of times the reason people are doing this is because they could have lost their phone, it broke and things like that. And now they're calling to say, hey, you can't send me a text message because my phone died. So I need you to send the verification to my email or whatever. And if the bad guys have access to the emails, then they just really run around. But there's got to be more thoughtfulness for these telecom providers to be able to protect their customers.
Yeah, this brings up an interesting kind of point, because another company that reached out to us a few weeks ago, another large, well-known company in our area, told us in the initial discovery call that they were on like this POP3 IMAP hosted email service through their MSP. And for any MSPs that are listening, you got to be aware that if you're outsourcing mail or hosting, you're not using like a Google Workspace or M365, and you're doing something else. You better know how if you're doing it yourself or you're hosting it yourself, you better know how you're protecting that information. And if you're out using a third party, you better know how that provider is protecting the information, or you could be in a lot of trouble. You want to know how fast they can detect breaches and how fast, people are, inside their system, or what they're even doing about it. Because a lot of these IMAP and POP3 servers and services that have been around for a while don't even have any security built into them whatsoever. So, and that's a lot of what happened here out in Australia. I mean, not only did they SIM swap, but they got into the email, this ISP, and they had no idea, which is really scary.
Yeah, it is.
Right. I mean, at least like I think of Rackspace, because I always like to pick on them, and how they decided just to get out of the business because they weren't going to patch. At least they shut it down and they didn't leave it running on customers, you know what I mean, to eventually get hacked. They got hacked, but eventually they didn't try to bring it back up. They knew that they were done once they got hacked. So, all right, guys, that's it. Quick takeaways: Qilin, scaling fast, getting smarter. I mean, at this point, we have to treat ransomware and hacking like an inevitability, not an exception. We thought we did some damage by taking down Ransom Hub, and this group just filled in the numbers, right?
They merged.
Yeah.
All the guys just went to the new company and brought all that knowledge and just continued it.
Right. So, we also learn when governments or businesses pay the ransom, they're not solving the problem, they're extending it. And even non-critical services like consumer email can become an attack path straight into your business. So as Randy said, think about if your Gmail or your Yahoo is your backup email plan. And if somebody compromised that and you didn't know it, is that an email account you even log into regularly or pay attention to? Would you even know if somebody got into it and then is using that to then reset your whole entire account somehow? These are things you need to think about if you have a business. And how many businesses out there, Randy, you think like started one guy, two guys, and they did something like this and completely forgot that it's like the backup email for their whole entire domain.
Yes.
And now they're like 200-person company.
All of them.
And nobody figured it out yet, right?
Yes.
We see it all the time. So that's why we talk about it, because we see these things in real life. So take the time to review your accounts, your access control. I mean, start looking at your backups and verifying those, and talk with your vendors about their security posture, because like we said, if you're using a third party and they have a problem, it can quickly become your problem. So you're only as strong as the weakest link in your chain. That includes employees, vendors, anyone you're doing business with. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the show with someone who needs a cybersecurity wake-up call. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/security squawk. It keeps us fueled for more research, more sarcasm, more cyber talk. We'll catch you next week. Stay safe. Stay well, everyone.
Bye,
Take
everybody.
care.